And we're recording now too. So, hi Mindy, hi Mickey.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you both today?
Really good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so happy that you're here. And we're talking a little, we'll chat a little bit, give people a chance to find us on Facebook. So I will fill a little, as they say, I said we're not professional, and the other thing, we'll fill some airtime. So Mindy, you're joining us from Austin, is that correct?
Yes, very hot Austin, Texas, just like everywhere else in the country, I think.
Yeah, I know, kind of around the world, it seems like these days.
Yeah.
And Mickey, where are you joining us from?
I'm in Seattle, Washington right now, which is actually also surprisingly hot right now.
Okay.
I feel like I'm in Austin, Texas, even though I'm in Seattle.
Well, we're in San Diego and it's still, I think, only in the 70s. So sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, I'll be right over.
I know. I was just going to say, maybe I shouldn't have said that too loud. It's just
seriously. Should keep that a secret.
Everyone's booking their flights as we forget about buying the book.
But
everyone's booking
the
their
airlines
flights
are like, what just happened?
What just happened? What happened here? We got an announcement for something. Just real quick. So Warwick's, for those of you that may be joining us from outside of the San Diego area, we're located in La Jolla, San Diego, little town just above the downtown proper area. My little sign there says 1896. Last year we celebrated our 125th anniversary. So I was telling Mindy in the green room, we're not the oldest bookstore in the country, but we're the oldest continuously family owned bookstore in the country. So, and been in La Jolla since the 30s. So it's been a good journey. So with that, one of the things that we do that we love, that is part of what Mindy was asking this too, part of what keeps us vibrant and alive is wonderful author events, and doing these virtual ones like with you, Mindy and Mickey, is what makes us keep going and still being relevant in this new age that we're all in. So tonight, if you're joining us on Facebook, there will be, I'm going to chat with you in the chat room of that. I'll be putting in Mickey's book, how you can order that. And also, if you have any questions, that's where you put questions in. So I'll be talking to you guys in different books and stuff that you can order from us from there. And then Mindy and Mickey are going to chat for about 30, 35 minutes. And so then if you have any questions, put those in and we'll bring those into the conversation. So I think I've done my housekeeping and given people a chance to find us here on Facebook. So let me introduce you to, and then we will start the show. So Mindy Henderson is a motivational speaker, writer, coach, host of the Truth About Things That Suck podcast, guest contributor of Morning Motivations on CBS Austin's We Are Austin Lifestyle Morning Show, and was recently named an Austin Woman to Watch, congratulations, by Austin Woman magazine. After a 20-year career in high tech, Mindy shifted her focus towards helping others realize their potential and normalize disability. Driven to build a world that welcomes and includes everyone in big capital letters, Mindy advocates for universal design in air travel, architecture, and fashion. She is here today. I know you have the book, Mickey, so maybe hold that up for us. She's here today to talk about her new book, The Truth About Things That Suck and How to Make Them Suck Less. I love that. Joining her is Mickey Rowe. Is it Rowe? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, you are spot on.
Perfect. Mickey has had a prolific and varied career as an actor, director, and public speaker. Mickey was the first autistic actor to play Christopher Boone, the lead role in the Tony Award-winning play, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which also made him the first autistic actor to ever play an autistic character in a professional performance setting. He has directed at Tony Award-winning theaters, appeared as the title role in the Tony Award-winning play Amadeus, and more. He has keynoted at venues including the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in New York, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Disability Rights Washington, Yale, and the Gershwin Theater on Broadway. He is a founding artistic director of National Disability Theater, which works in partnership with Tony Award-winning companies such as happens to be La Jolla Playhouse right here in San Diego and the Goodman Theater in Chicago. And like Mickey said, he lives in Seattle. So it's truly an honor to have both of you. Great bios. Love that you both are here with us. So have a great conversation and we'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Mindy, I am so excited to get to talk to you and ask you questions about the truth about things that suck and how to make them suck less.
I'm more excited to talk to you. So
oh, that's sweet of you to say. So for anyone in the audience, by the way, my name is Mickey. My pronouns are he, him. I'm autistic and legally blind, but if anyone else in the Facebook world or YouTube world who's watching is blind or low vision, know that I'm a white man with a black t-shirt and kind of a blue cardigan-y jacket on, and I'm in front of a bookcase. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'll go next.
Awesome.
My name's Mindy. My pronouns are she and her. I'm wearing a camouflage sort of t-shirt with a bold red lip that I'm hoping is not on my teeth at the moment. And I'm also sitting in front of a bookcase and a sort of the bottom half of a painting of the Eiffel Tower.
So cool. Okay, so Mindy, the truth about things that suck and how to make them suck less is truly like a book full of wit and wisdom, and it encourages readers who are currently struggling to overcome obstacles. And also, though, readers who might be preparing to face large obstacles down the road. But what I loved so much is not only did you use your own brilliant lived experience for this book, because in my opinion, we are all the experts on our own lived experience.
So true.
But you also used a lot of used scientific research and interviews with other experts in the book as well. Can you talk a little bit about what the process was of doing that kind of research to include other voices as well as your own?
Yeah, I love that question. It was a process to write this book. It was actually probably like a 12-year journey. And I honestly, I think I thought for the first time about, maybe I could grow up and be a writer when I was like 8 or 10 years old. But I started thinking about it seriously about 10 years ago. And or 12 years ago, all that I knew was that I wanted to help people navigate their challenges. And there's clearly a lot of directions you could go with that, a lot of different things that you could do. And so, I started writing my stories and talking about what I knew, but it went through a few different iterations along the way. And it always kind of felt like something was missing, And so at one point it just sort of struck me that the reason I wanted to write a book about helping people navigate their challenges was because we all have challenges, and it's universal, and, all of our challenges look different, but the strategies and the tools that we can use to get through them are universal. And so I started thinking to myself, I want to start, I know how I did it. I know how I've gotten through my struggles and my challenges, but I started thinking about, it would be interesting to talk to other people who have been through some really hard things and, see the themes that come together, or, the disconnects or things that people did differently. And it was really interesting because I interviewed probably 20 or 30 people, and every single person said almost the same things to me. And so it was really interesting to talk, and people with wildly different challenges, everything from infertility to abusive relationships to mental illness. I mean, all kinds of things. And, the way that people who successfully navigated something tended to use the same techniques and strategies and things. And so that was really helpful in terms of sort of building the framework of the book. But then I also just got incredibly lucky one day because I had sort of a dream to interview a guy named Sean Aker, who is a happiness researcher.
Yeah.
And he's someone who I follow. I've heard him speak, and he talks a lot about gratitude and things, which is a big theme in my book, and has been a huge strategy in my own life. And I thought to myself, this would be, pure gold if I could interview Sean for this book. And I sent just a blind email to his company asking if I could interview him. And he himself wrote me back the next day. I never thought I would hear from anybody. And he said, sure, how about Wednesday? And so I got to tap into his wisdom and some of the research that he's done. And it was a really interesting, fulfilling process.
Yeah. So awesome. When you talk about how universal the book is, how universal the book is, and that we all have such different challenges. But I also think spreading your message through the lens of your own story, through the lens of disability and your story, is so helpful and so universal in its own way too, because even though the book doesn't just help disabled folks, I often joke with people who sometimes I hear people say like, well, why should I care about, when I'm talking about my life or my story about disability? Sometimes people say, why should I care about disability? Or why should I care about accessibility? And something that I kind of half serious, half jokingly say to people is that I think disability is truly one of the only equal opportunity minority groups. Anyone can join our prestigious club at any time.
Oh my gosh, right? That's brilliant. I've never heard it described that way, but it's so true.
But just like crossing the street to check the mail, or getting in a car, or getting a new diagnosis, right? And we're all aging. And should we be lucky enough, should everyone be lucky enough to live long enough, everyone will be disabled someday. Can you talk for, oh, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And, you know, they talk about people in the workforce, and there are statistics like 1 in 4 people in the workforce are either disabled or will have a disability in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. You also talked about, or gosh, I'm going to jump around a little bit because you just talked about the workforce, but I know, you know, in the book, I remember you also talking a little bit about unemployment, and a couple times when you lost your job. And, you know, that is something, as an autistic person, that's something really near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
A statistic that I refer back to a lot is that, and this statistic is from maybe 5 years ago, pre-COVID. So I'm not sure that they haven't done a new study to replace it yet, but that it's estimated up to 85% of college graduates on the autism spectrum are unemployed.
Yeah.
And then I know for people with developmental disabilities like autism, like myself, even if you do get a job, there's no guarantee of getting paid minimum wage. That even though I think national minimum wage for most people is $7.25, that if you have a disability, or I think often developmental disabilities, employers are legally allowed to choose to pay you even just a few pennies per hour. So disability or unemployment and job loss have definitely been things that affected me and resonated with me. Can you talk a little bit though about your experience with that section in the book, and when you talk about losing your job?
Yeah, well, it's
what you
happened
learned from it as well.
Yeah, it's happened twice in my career. I had a 20-year career in high tech before I made the change to doing what I'm doing now. And, you know, both times were the result of layoffs by the company. And, you know, it's interesting because the two stories that I tell in the book, the circumstances were different each time, you know. And the first time I was still pretty young in my career, and, you know, I wasn't doing a lot in my career to make myself stand out, let's say. You know, I was struggling a little bit in the position that I was in, and there are things that I could have done and ways that I could have helped myself, and I didn't. And, it took me a long time to kind of take responsibility for that. But, what I learned through that process and losing my job that time was, it really sharpened my work ethic. And the next job that I took, I became a very solid employee, and I learned a lot about accountability and, the different ways that we can help ourselves in our careers without, you can get mentors and things, and people come along in our careers that can help us, and that's great. But I really learned that I had to help myself, and that my ambition and my skills and all of that was my responsibility. And so, that's what I took away from the first time around. The second time around, it was about 3 years ago, and I had this 20-year career behind me. I had a lot of really varied experience and a lot of really good skills. I thought I was a really competitive employee. And when the company I was working for was purchased, I had been working there for about 6.5 years, and, just decided it was time to move on to my next big adventure, and thought that I would go on to work my next corporate career, office job, in the software industry. And 10 months later, I was still looking for work. And this was in Austin, Texas, where the software industry is huge. And, I had that kind of bathroom floor moment, I like to call it, where I kind of realized at that point that, again, I was going to have to be responsible for saving myself. And I decided that I could either in that moment become the worst version of myself and become bitter and angry and frustrated, or I could hire myself and, create a new career that was made up of my passions and the things that I'd wanted to do for years and years, and look at it as an opportunity to do those things. And here I am 3 years later with my dream career and doing absolutely everything I've ever wanted to do.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've definitely had to hire myself and figure out my own way in some ways and come up with my own dream career. So that resonates with me in so many ways.
Yeah, it's true. And I'd love to go back to something
Please.
you said earlier, just talking about disability in general, and the idea that this book is not necessarily just for people with disabilities and things. And I just want to talk about that for a minute, because it's such a good point. And I think, July is Disability Pride Month. And it's such a good time to just talk about the realities of disability. And one of the things that was really prevalent when I worked this 20-year career was that in that 20 years, I worked for 3 different companies that had thousands of employees. And I was the only person in a wheelchair I ever saw. And since then, I've done a lot of speaking at companies and things, and I hear a lot of people say things to the effect, and, I commend them for their honesty, but I hear a lot of people say things like, that they've never known a person with a disability, and that they're a little bit uncomfortable. They don't know how to behave, don't know how to act. And I think when I wrote this book, that was one of the intentions that I had, because I wanted it to cover a lot of topics and things that everybody experiences in life, things like job loss and, sickness and loneliness and shame and, all of the different things in the book. But I also wanted to use it as an opportunity to expose people also to disability. And, I'm a person who's lived my whole life with a disability, and it's weaved through a lot of the book and a lot of my stories. But also at the same time, I tried to offer up information and perspectives that would be universally useful.
Yeah.
If that
And
makes sense.
when you did it so brilliantly and so well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, what you're just making me think. I don't know how many of my questions we're going to get to, because I keep going in bunny holes based on things you say, but I totally see that too, how even though we know that, right, between 20 and 25% of the population has a disability,
Yeah.
we don't always see that in companies. And I think part of the reason why is maybe sometimes people hear the word accommodation or reasonable accommodation, and they sometimes get scared or think about disabled people as burdens a little bit sometimes, maybe. But one thing that I think people forget, which is true, like this is just true for all companies to get the best work out of all of their employees, and true for all people, is that, universal design helps all of us.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
When I'm in the airport, if I'm in the airport going to a speaking gig and I have my rolling luggage and I see the stairs and I see the ramp, I'm going to take the ramp. Even though I don't have a mobility disability and I don't need that ramp, it made my life easier.
Yes.
Or when I'm pushing my kids in the stroller, on the side, going on a walk, and I have to cross the street, I use that curb cut. And even though, right, that curb cut was needed and advocated for by people with mobility disabilities, it made my life easier. It made the delivery guy who is delivering all the food to the business, it made his life easier, or their life easier.
It's so true. It's so funny. I was at this sort of outdoor shopping mall a couple of weeks ago, and there were curb cuts everywhere. It was done pretty well, but I got to this one section where you got to the end of the block and all there were was stairs, and there was no way to get off the sidewalk at that point.
Yeah.
And so I had to go down the hill and all the way back around and up the street, facing oncoming traffic and all of that to get up to the part of the mall that I wanted to be at. And when I was coming back down, leaving that section of the mall, just like you said, there was a mom in a stroller, one of those double-decker strollers with two kids, and somebody had stopped and was helping her carry the stroller down the steps. And I was like, see, it's not just me.
No, if we make the world accessible, we are helping all of, I use captions all the, I'm not deaf or hard of hearing, but I often will be watching a video on public transportation or in the library or in a waiting room, right? And all of these things, we are always making the world easier for ourselves and for our future selves.
Yes.
When we design accessibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, you mentioned how I was an actor, but something that might surprise folks, especially might surprise folks who know you from your career as a public speaker and things like that, is that you were a singer and you've actually sung with some pretty famous people too. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, so it's been a while. I'll say that, but I grew up loving music. I'm going to date myself, but I grew up in the 70s and loved country music. I fell in love with Barbara Mandrell. If anybody watching, if you don't know Barbara Mandrell, I'm just going to say Google her, because she's fabulous. And she made me want to be a country music singer. And so I grew up, first singing in church choir and all of that. And then in high school, I competed in choir and all of that. And then I went to college and, deviated from music a little bit. But then in my 20s, I got back to it and did some really fun things. I recorded music with George Strait's musicians, which was so amazing. It was absolutely fantastic. I showed up at the studio that day, and the producer that I was working with had told me that he was going to take care of getting musicians to show up that day. And I showed up and he started introducing them to me and said, you might know George Strait, who they tour with and record with and all of that. So that was really fun. I've gotten to sing with Asleep at the Wheel, which is a huge, Texas band. They're big in Texas. And yeah, I've gotten to sing on national television on, if you remember the old Jerry Lewis MDA telethons from back in the day, got to sing on those a few times. So it was a good time.
That's so that sounds like, one, it sounds like a good time, and two, it also sounds astounding.
Yeah.
You also talk a lot about disappointment in the book,
Yeah.
and how sometimes we don't get what we want, or the things that we want in life don't happen in the way we pictured it in our head, that we can't always get the things that we want in the way we initially pictured them. And I feel like I know a lot about this because I spent 2 years of my life or more advocating for the fact that I thought the play Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime on Broadway should be auditioning autistic actors. And I thought it was really, I thought that for a play that is entirely about seeing the world through this neurodivergent mind,
right,
and for a play where that's the entire plot of the play is this neurodivergent character, the entire lens for the play, I thought that it was really important that they actually be hiring neurodivergent people, hiring autistic people, or at least auditioning autistic actors for the role.
Yeah.
And I spent years advocating for that, and made it to the final callback where they had they had all us final Christophers in the room together, and I had a 1 in 3 shot. And the Broadway production never ended up casting or feeling comfortable enough to cast an autistic actor for the role. So, and I still ended up getting to do it, getting to be the first autistic Christopher, but certainly not in the way I first pictured or imagined.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about important lessons that you've learned in how to be resilient in the face of disappointment?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I've learned about disappointment is that sometimes, and I've seen this again and again in my life, sometimes a disappointment leads us in the direction of something so much better than we could have ever imagined, something that we didn't even have the foresight to wish for, because our minds just weren't thinking that way, and so I think that's the beautiful thing about disappointment is, I think that there's a time to let yourself be led a little bit, and we all have a journey that we're on, and disappointment is part of that journey. And I think that what disappointment teaches us is to be a bit flexible, and to, there are times when maybe someone else gets what you want, and, learning a bit of grace and generosity, and to be happy for that other person. But, I think that the disappointments in life, if you can let go a little bit and let yourself be led in a slightly different direction, sometimes it's just a detour that's going to lead you back to exactly what the goal was. And then sometimes, like I said, it's going to lead you to something it's entirely different than what you'd envisioned, and is so much better. I mean, that's, I think, a perfect example of what happened to me the last time I lost my job. I spent 10 months banging my head into a wall trying to get this next corporate job. And when I finally just let go and said, okay, I'll try something else, and kind of read the writing on the wall, I felt like a weight lift, and things just became easier. And I ended up in a much better place than I thought I was destined for.
Yeah. Before I ask another question, I want to really quickly mention to everyone, I should have mentioned this at the start, but I was too excited to talk to Mindy and ask my questions of Mindy. If anyone watching has any questions, please feel free to share your questions, because I don't want to hog all of this time with Mindy. You all deserve your time with Mindy too. So if you have any questions, Julie, I'm not sure how they ask questions, but I assume that you can write them in the comments on Facebook and they'll somehow get passed off here. Perfect. If Julie, do we have any questions now from people who are watching? Great. So we don't have any questions yet, but yes, if you have any questions, please just put those in the comments on Facebook Live. And I'm sure that Mindy will have brilliant answers for all of your questions. You also talk, going back to what we were just talking about being led and things not always working the way we planned, but being okay with being led. You talk in the book about the struggle to become a mom. Is that a similar situation of reality not always matching the expectation we had or the picture we initially paint in our head, but things working out anyway? Or
Yeah, I think so. I grew up kind of always assuming that I would be a mom and always wanted to be a mom. And I grew up with playing with my dolls and taking care of them and practicing changing diapers and doing all the things. And it was in my probably early 20s when my neurologist confirmed for me that for me to have a child biologically would be fairly risky, and to both myself and to the child. And so I started to think about other ways to become a mom. And I think we all know there are 1,001 different ways to make a family these days. And so, I think that if you can go into it with an open mind and love in your heart that you want to share with a child, you can be led to that right decision. And we researched everything under the sun, every country you could adopt from. We looked at domestic adoption, we looked at foster to adopt, all sorts of things, and we kept coming back to Chinese adoption, and felt very led in that direction, and ended up with a daughter who, I personally feel like we were destined to become her parents. And you can't help but look at a situation like that and realize there's this beautiful child over here. They actually called them waiting children because we were looking for a child that was a bit older, like 4 or 5, and it was she was waiting for her parents and we were waiting for our daughter, and our roads led us to each other.
So awesome. I feel like also a lot of your book is about kind of stepping back and reframing mindset a little bit. Is that fair to say? Definitely.
100%, because I think what I've learned in life, and I have had a lot of opportunity to learn to navigate challenges and things. And what I've learned is that the mindset that we look at our challenges through, that mindset can make the circumstances and the situations so much worse or so much better. Yeah. And, I think that it's a process that you have to go through. Anytime you're facing a challenge and something bad happens, I'm sure that there's, a very technical, specific grieving process that a psychologist would tell you that you have to go through. And there's, I'm sure, different stages that a more schooled person than I am would tell you that you have to walk through when you go through a challenge. And I do think that you have to take a minute and feel what you're feeling and go through what you're going through. But I think that hope is really, really important. I think that gratitude is important, and gratitude, I think, has to be sort of a preemptive strategy. And I talk about that too in the book, because if something bad is happening, you can absolutely sit down with a piece of paper and write down 5 things you're grateful for. But I think the impact is going to be much, much stronger if you make it a practice leading up to those challenges in your life, because it kind of rewires the way that you think and process and approach the hard things, and allows you to get to a constructive place much more quickly. If you can find ways to incorporate things like hope and gratitude into your life.
Mm-hmm. It looks like I have time for one more. Oh, we do have a question from the audience now. So maybe I'll let the audience member go first before my last.
We'll do that, and then you can ask another question.
Sounds perfect.
Oh my God, you two. I could listen to both of you for hours. Your grace, I mean, honestly, your grace and your inspiration is just infectious. And it comes across on Zoom like this is amazing. I can't even imagine what it's like to be in a room with either one of you. It just has to just be get chills.
You're so sweet. Well, and it's killing me because I have 1,000 questions I would like to ask Mickey.
Well, and I think we're going to ask Mickey, because we're going to ask Mickey a little bit about his book too, out of Fearlessly Difficult. So we're going to do that. But Laura does have a question. So Mindy, do you have any advice for teens and young adults on navigating disabilities as they get older?
That's a good question. Are we talking about people with a disability, or people who
are okay, who get a disability as they're older? I don't know. Let's see if it takes Facebook a minute or two.
I know.
So let's see if Laura can do that. So while we're waiting for that answer, maybe
I have an answer for that question though. While we're waiting, I think that works either way, which is, one thing I've struggled with a lot as an autistic person is a lot of internalized able, or feeling like I'm a burden, or feeling like I can't drive because of my eyesight, feeling like because I can't drive, I'm a burden, or things like this, which is not helpful or productive for anyone, and just not a good way to like make a happy, confident human being. Because we all want to, just more than anything, we all want to feel valuable and valued, and we want to all feel productive, like we are giving something positive to the world. And what I've been doing for myself is reframing. There's the medical model of disability, is what it's officially called for some reason, which says like there's something wrong with a disabled person that needs to be fixed or made whole or cured a little bit. But then there's also the social model, which is different from that, which says actually every human being is perfect exactly the way they are. Like there is no right way to be human. And so we don't need to try to fix or cure or make whole disabled people. But instead, what we need to do is just work on our society. Universal design is a word that Mindy used earlier. Work on our society and make it so that our society is accessible to everyone. Our society is inclusive of everyone. Our society values everyone. And reframing that makes me realize, oh, you know what? I'm not a burden for not being able to drive. I just need to work on changing society to make it so that people who can't drive can still
get
do
around
all the things that we need to do and get around.
Right.
That's so true.
And I think to Mindy, to the question point too, could be that as young adults and teens, most have support networks around them. But as you get older and as those support networks go away, and because as you age, you become much more isolated.
Yes, it's true. And I think what I wanted to add to Mickey's answer was so spot on. But I think I also want to add, disability or not, we all have strengths and weaknesses, let's say, and things, places and things where we excel, and places where we need a little bit of help, and I think that the more a person can identify their strengths and what they do bring to the table and all of those things, I think that just like Mickey was saying, I think it serves to make you a much more strong, confident, secure person, and allows you to navigate life in a much more productive way.
And
Yeah.
then
Go ahead.
and jumping off that, yes, and it also makes you confident to like be able to find community that's going to be mutually supportive, where because all the things you offer to the table, that then the things that you might need help with, or that might not be your strengths, you feel really confident finding a community that can support you in those things, because that you are adding just as much value, equal value to the table as the people who are helping you.
Just in a different way.
Yeah, I was in special education. Julie, I was in special ed through school. I had occupational therapy and speech therapy and all of this through high school. But you're exactly right what you said, Julie, that this all ends when someone turns 18, most times all these supports disappear.
Right.
So I think the more you can do to help someone who's on the brink of that age, like an 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 16-year-old, find who has a disability, I guess, from the question, it sounded like, find that community within the disability community, find mentors, find community before they all of a sudden age out of all their services. That's help. And especially now that so much of that community is happening online and virtually, it doesn't even need to be people who live in your city. You can just find community on Facebook, like through Facebook Live events like this, or on TikTok. I think a lot of the younger generation of disability people are doing it now. But the more you can find community to also just to be able to talk with and say, hey, help me reframe this, help me figure out how to navigate this issue, this right.
Because even going into going into college, and this happens with the foster care system as well. It's like you age out of the foster care system and the same thing happens. All of the support goes away, and kids with disabilities and foster, trying to go to college, just like getting into that. It's like navigating that without support is just a crazy thing too. Okay, Mickey, tell us a little bit about your book. We want to hear what if you had to do the elevator pitch, what is your book about?
So Fearlessly Different. My book is, I guess, about my journey from special education to stilt walking, busking on the street as an autistic and legally blind single dad with full custody of my autistic kid, busking on the street to make ends meet, all the way to hatching a plan to try to get to Broadway's biggest stage. So I think that's my 2 sentence of Fearlessly Different.
How was the journey to get that? So did you always want to write your story? Did you always feel like that was something that because I mean, everybody's got this story, but do they, trying to write it and putting it out there and same for you, Mindy, it's a journey. I mean, talk about another journey.
It's true.
So, and I think what I was really frustrated because so many of the stories, especially, 5 years ago when I started working on this, or 4 years ago, however long it was when I started working on this, so many of the, I hear a puppy. So many of the stories that I was seeing in bookstores about disability were written by non-disabled people, or were written with no input from the disability community. A lot of them had really problematic tropes in them. And I was seeing so much amazing, important information from within the scholarly information from within the disability community, but I wasn't seeing it make its way quickly enough for me, or as quickly as I was hoping, into the general public's discourse about diversity and equity and inclusion.
Right.
And so
because that's what's going to change, like you were talking about, changing the universe around you is only going to happen if the non-disabled are seeing stories, you know, it has to come
Yeah.
out of that bubble. It has to come out of that vacuum.
I think it's helpful. So I was seeing so much really important scholarship in the disability community, but that a lot of non-disabled people didn't know about. So I thought, maybe if I can write a story, because people really like to latch onto stories. Stories are so much easier to connect with sometimes than just like facts and statistics, right? So I thought if I could write a really exciting hero's journey, adventurous story, then maybe people would connect with that. And I would be able to use that story to start feeding the audience all the pieces of disability scholarship that I wanted them to know along the way, hopefully in a way where maybe they didn't even realize how much disability scholarship they were getting, because they were just hopefully invested in the story, but learning all the things that I desperately needed and wanted them to know along the way. So I think that's why I chose to write Fearlessly Different.
Yeah, congratulations. Because the publishing world, it's tough. It's to talk about the other disappointments and and both of your mentality on disappointment is just, it's so awe-inspiring. And so, but the publishing world is another one of those where it's just like, oh my God, that's a whole other navigation.
It is.
I'm sure my mentality sounds good on paper, but I'm sure in practice it doesn't always work out as perfectly as.
Well, but it's striving for, right? We've got to keep striving for it.
Exactly. Every day is working to do better.
Every day better than yesterday, right?
Exactly.
It's true. It's true. But again, I think we all own our disappointment, and it's up to us whether we get back up again and try again. And nobody else is responsible for whether we get what we want or we don't get what we want. And the only surefire way to not get what you want is to not get back up again and try again.
Right. And it's the human experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah.
It's
you
true.
two have been just amazing. And I can't thank you enough for coming into Warwick's with us tonight. It's been great.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
Mindy, is there some place that you want to send people? Do you like to do social media? Do you have a website you want to send anybody to? What would you like to do with that?
Sure. I do have a website. It's mindyhendersonco.com. And I'm on I'm not on TikTok. I feel like I'm too old for TikTok.
I
feel like I know it's out of TikTok a little bit.
No.
I know I love TikTok, but I feel like
I appreciate it, but I just don't feel like I can contribute to it.
Absolutely. So, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I really genuinely do love to hear from people. I read all of the emails and things that come in. So I'd love to connect with anybody out there and hear what you're going through and how I can help.
Fantastic. Mickey, how about you? Do you have a website or any social media you want to tell people about?
Yeah, my website is mickeyrowe.com, www.mickeyrowe.com. And I'm also on all the social medias too. So find me on social media. I think I'm Mickey Marion Rowe, which is my married name on some of the social media. But yeah, and I'd love to hear from people too.
Excellent.
And it's been so exciting getting to be here talking to Mindy about the truth about things that suck and how to make them suck less.
I love it. Excellent way to end.
Well, and I have to thank Mickey too. I know that you're a busy guy and I appreciate you taking the time out to come talk with me. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you both. You both have a wonderful rest of your evening and weekend, and hope to see you again on that next book.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye.
Bye.